since we're on the topic, and this is a great conversation so far, I did also want to touch on your job that you're currently doing, and um, kind of to get to hear from you what you do in your job. What does it mean to be to have your role, and what does an average day look like in your job? Like, if I know you can't like every day looks probably different, but if you were to like kind of show what an average day looks like, walk us through your day, I would love that.
For sure. Um, so you already oh my gosh, hit the nail on the head in terms of no day looks the same. I'm working on something different every single day. It just depends on like what the team needs. Um, I guess for starters, my role on paper is commercial customer success associate. And within the team, I am a content strategist aligned to a specific group of products within Adobe. It's not the Creative Cloud stuff. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble. I'm on the Experience Cloud side with like Adobe Experience Manager, Analytics, Target, Marketo, Commerce, stuff like that. Um, and uh, to describe exactly the stuff that I do, I guess the consistent things, I do scaled engagement emails for our customers within a certain domain, so like certain group of products, for AEM, analytics, and target to be specific. And that's all around like how to better use the product, or like tips and tricks of what to do, how to troubleshoot issues. We're still trying to figure out strategy for that because this domain was new to my team. They had never worked with these groups of products before. In fact, when I first joined the team, we got to choose between their 3 different domains. I decided to do the one that no one knew anything about because of the confidence that I gained throughout college of like, you know what, give me something ambiguous, I could do that. And what that process basically looked like was I knew what the products were. My manager pointed me in the directions of like who to talk to and like who controls what. And so I went out, I asked a bunch of questions about what tools they used, what the products were. I did my own research of like what each product did, basically gathered all of that information and presented that presentation of like, I think it was like a 20-minute presentation of like what the domain was, what they use in terms of tooling. Like I'm trying to think of what it was in that presentation, but it happened so long ago. And I presented that to a team of people who have been there from like maybe a month to years at Adobe, and people who definitely had way more experience in industry and like tech customer success in general than I did. And as terrifying as that is, like I was pretty confident in it because it was still like I have my sources. I know what these things do now. I'm kind of like now the product expert, kind of not really for my team for these products. And like at the end, they're like, "Wow, I learned a lot from that presentation, Nicole. Thank you." And I was like, "Heck yeah, let's do it." Um, but that all those skills, like I honestly didn't get that from classes at all. I got that from like Mustang Consulting and Women in Business. I really dove deep into that part, but other parts of my job, like I leaned in a lot to our email automation, which takes like data from one part of the business to send alerts to like our customer success managers. I won't go too in depth on that, but kind of combined my knowledge of IS and how to like diagram things and sort of like think about how data can work with each other and producing like something like an automated alert for internal stakeholders. Then aside from that, like just learning Salesforce, trying to work with different teams and helping the VSMs or CSMs aligned to my domain, like just make their lives easier, especially since they're starting brand new because they're also new to our particular organ team. I feel like all of that was probably super vague and like, okay, a lot of jargon, most likely, a lot of acronyms for sure. But basically, my job boils down to supporting customer success managers as sort of like the strategy and ops behind everything, which is really cool because I feel like it's not a normal job that a lot of people think of as like an entry level job right out of college, like usually strategy and ops, which like I don't know if this is necessarily strategy and ops. I'd like to think of it as like a form of strategy and ops almost for these teams, but usually those jobs are like, or true strategy and ops jobs, those are like MBA, 3 to 5 years of experience already. Trying to think if there's anything else to add, but honestly, I can't think of. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. It kind of also spurred, like, it started another question in my head. So jobs like these, I feel like there's a couple of jobs that you always hear about, especially in tech. Like, you're like, okay, there is a software engineer, there is a product manager, there is a CEO. There's like these, like, I guess, staple roles in an organization, in a tech organization, if someone wants to go there. But then, other roles, there's so much more. There's so
Mhm.
much more in a company. And I feel like that exposure is not as commonly found. And I'm just curious to know, did you know what exactly you were getting into or what you were looking for during the job search for this? Or was it more like, okay, Adobe is kind of like a company that you're really interested in because of the work culture. You also did an internship there. And then you kind of learned through the job.
I It'll be a roundabout way of answering the question. I'm going to start back at the time I was a solution consulting intern for Adobe. Um, so I mentioned before that I was kind of so-so about solution consulting. Um, but through that job, just because they had plans for in person and all of a sudden had to switch to virtual, I had a lot more free time during my job. So I kind of took the opportunity and started poking around in like Workday. They have whole org structure basically of like who does what teams what teams there are. So I started looking into the digital strategy org as well as value consulting org, which has a lot of things to do around like ROI calculators. Again, I'm sorry, the three-letter acronyms, it's just everywhere in tech. But I talked to those people, asked them more about like what do you like doing? In fact, I have two whole like notebooks. You can't even see it. I like drawing and
Whoa.
stuff. These are all filled with coffee chats that I had with people at Adobe. And that's another good thing about an internship. Like everyone who's in college, high school, or like currently in a role, take notes if you haven't done this already. That sounded so presumptuous of me. I'm so sorry. But um take the opportunity while you're in that company to poke around and see what other job opportunities, like maybe even roles that you've never heard of, and just ask them what they do. Like more like, again, worst thing that can happen is that they say no, like, or you can't block anyone on Slack or like email. They'll just be like, no, I don't want to talk to you, and you're like, okay, have a good day. um but I got all of the like I picked their brain. I was like, what do you enjoy about the job? Do you do this in it? And they were sometimes like, no, I actually do this, or yes, I do exactly that. And I asked them advice of like, well, what would you say someone needs for that? Like kind of what you're doing now that I think about it. Like, well, what does someone need to lead a textile company? Or what does someone need to be a product manager at Google? And they'll just be like, you need this. And I was like, okay, cool, thanks. Great talk. And I ended up not keeping in touch with many people after that, but like taking their knowledge, like I was like, okay, if they don't give me an offer for solution consulting, at least I know like the titles of the things that I want to do roughly. And of course, it varies from like company to company because like especially tech companies, they could think of like the wildest names to like name a job. And it's like, well, you're a cloud evangelist that does cloud architecture. And I don't even know what that means. I two common words that I like hear every now and then. I digress. Um, so once the internship ended, it was already kind of up in the air whether they would be able to give me or the other intern who was with me a full-time offer. And when it came that we weren't able to get a full-time offer for this particular role, they're like, well, there's this other role, customer success associate, open if you'd be interested. And my understanding of customer success associate was closer to customer success manager, where they help they help make sure that their customers are able to get the ROI intended from their product, as well as help with like upsell or cross sell for different products. And I had already been like, I was very solid. Like, I didn't want to be in a purely sales role, despite being in solution consulting. Like, kind of, they're more of like the technical people of the sale. But I think CSMs, they're closer to like actually being a part of like the like upsell, cross sell motion. And I said, well, not exactly what I want to do, but I'll interview for it anyway just to see what it's like. And then I ended up really liking the team. At the same time, I was interviewing for other like jobs just so that I'd be able to compare not only salary, but like what I'd be doing and sort of weigh my pros and cons, or even where I am. And it just came down to the decision, like, you know, I really like the team. Um, Even if I'm not really sure what I will be doing, I trust that they'll have something for me, and that like even like sort of the optimistic sort of outlook, like who knows what I'm going to be doing, but why not just try it and see how it works out? And if I don't like it, I can leave in 2 years or like a year or 3 years. Like we'll see what happens. That's kind of the, I think, the beauty so far of full time. Like, it's not completely set in stone. Like, yes, you have to be here for a couple of years, but you don't have like, you're not completely signing your life away. Like there's an opportunity to jump ship, even if it doesn't feel so good, even if it's uncomfortable. um that answer your question?
Yes, it did. And I'm very impressed by those two notebooks that you pulled out. Like, wow, incredible. And like the little, did you make the designs by
Yeah,
yourself?
yeah. I think like during the red one, that was the first one. I like had it on my desk, and as they were going through like the orientation and everything, that's when I started drawing it. And by the time I was done, the orientation was also done. So I'm like, oh, cool.
Wow. Well, it would be unfair of me to not touch upon all that knowledge that you've gained from your coffee chats. So I want to, like, if you could tell from all that knowledge, like what's currently like up and booming, with what is the growing and upcoming thing in the software industry, according to you?
Honestly, from those coffee chats, that was more about the jobs themselves.
The
I
roles.
can say from like a content management software perspective or content management system perspective, which like even then, like I'm only 9 months in, I know like this much of it. Personalization at scale is definitely like a very hot topic for any sort of like website building or asset management. And I feel like that's, I mean, all of this last Adobe Summit, which happened in March, like all surrounding anything to do with like being able to make sure that you have like omni-channel personalization for anytime, anywhere, using like, well, they used to be able to use third-party cookies, but since that's going away, I feel like that's all common knowledge. But that was basically the focal point of Summit, this like whole topic of being able to personalize a website, personalize ads, personalize like what a user sees to what their interests are. So for instance, like let's say you really enjoy the beach, and let's say I really enjoy hiking in the mountains, and we both go to a travel website. Personalization at scale would be like, even if we both went to the website at the same time, you would see something that was more like, look at these beachy things to do, and then I would see like, look at all these mountainy things to do. That is such a like very simple example. And like if anyone in the CMS team looks at this, they'll probably roll their eyes at my description of it, but I'd say that's like the closest thing I have to like any perspective in software. Like I still like it, everything is so complex. Like I'm even surprised that I have like a grasp of understanding of what a lot of the Experience Cloud products do in Adobe, but they're all very high level. So I hope that was an answer
Yeah.
that you wanted to
So
hear.
getting personalized customer service provided to you, right? Like,
Or like, yeah,
would you say that?
yeah, like
I
being
kind of
able,
tried to go ahead.
I think in some cases it could be customer service. It could just be like going to Target, like the Target website and seeing like, oh, I was just thinking about getting an air fryer, and the first thing that pops up is air fryer. Um, just sort of personalizing it to like entice you to buy, basically.
That's happened to me way too many times. It's really creepy, but that's the way technology is now. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like, especially with Alexa, there's been times when I'm like really sus of Alexa and I'm like, I don't know. But,
Same.
um, anyways, that part aside, you did talk about this, and this was the second point I wanted to touch upon. So, what's your take on being in a company and like the right amount of time that you're supposed to be at a company? I know right now you love your job at Adobe. It's a great place for you. But I also feel like I've noticed this with people and previous guests that I've had on, like they were talking about it, that they've kind of seen a generation gap where before you would stick with the same company, you would have the same kind of role. And now you kind of have the freedom to explore more and you can do multiple
Mhm.
different jobs, or even like you can stay with a company for a certain amount of time and it's not considered bad necessarily to move and go to a different company very soon. There's no like real timeline. Would you say that's true? And what's your take on that?
Honestly, I've I mean, just thinking about like the new grad experience and like what I've seen friends do, um, if they're unhappy in their jobs, they won't stay in it for longer than they need to. Like they're there for a year. If they're able to find something that is a better opportunity, they'll jump for it. And honestly, I feel like that is that's the right move for you. There's only I think you mentioned just this in another interview, but there's only so much time that you have in a day, so much time that you have in your life. Like if you don't enjoy your job, if you are if you feel like you're genuinely suffering in what you're doing, like don't stay for longer than you need to. That's my opinion. Like if it's not if it's not serving you, if all of these red flags are coming up, if like your team undermines your boundaries or like crosses them often even though you've stated them multiple times, like that's
Mhm.
not an environment that you'll want to grow in, or and it's not somewhere where you'll feel like you have impact, especially if all of these things are piling up and making you feel like, um I don't feel like I'm valued here, or I don't feel like my work is being seen, or I feel like I'm doing a lot more than they said that I would originally. Like, I feel like if you're starting to feel that way and work is starting to take over all of your life, like, and you don't want it to, some people want that. I personally don't want that. That's not my personal choice. Like, if my job started taking over, like, outside of like the designated time that I set out, like, especially since my team allows me to be flexible, like, I wouldn't want to be a part of it for more than a year, maybe even less. And I think maybe people would look down on that. But if you give that perspective and clearly say, like, they were really impeding on these boundaries that I had set for myself that are very reasonable. And all of these things that piled up, like there was a certain red flag, or there was this like certain person on my team, or like the company culture wasn't what I expected it to be, or they didn't like live up to the promises that they had said in like either offer letter or something like that. Offer letter, I feel like you could press more than just like bye, I'm leaving the company. I feel like that gets into legal territory, but I have no idea. I just work here. Um, like I feel like those are valid enough reasons to move on and find another opportunity. And honestly, I feel like if you voice that, like, they really weren't respecting my boundaries, but new employer, I've heard that like you have very flexible work hours, and that's something that I really value for myself, and like I would really want for myself. Like I feel like they wouldn't come from a place of like, how dare would they want like flexible work hours? How dare would they want equitable pay? How dare would they want better benefits for themselves? Or even to ask those questions like, what are the benefits for this job, even if you don't have it? Like it's almost like an exchange. Like you're interviewing so that you can see like what the company's like, what they can provide for you and potentially your family, or like if you live with like others, like how would they be able to provide for me? And they're interviewing you to see like, okay, what value can Prisha bring? Like what could she bring to the team? Like it's definitely a two-way street, and it shouldn't have to be like, oh, we bait you into all of these things so that you come, but then we're not gonna like fulfill all of that. Of course, like there's some things that come up short. There's some things where it won't meet your expectations, but if it's not to the point where it's like impeding your everyday life or you're crying after work or something like that. I have stories of friends who have gone through that where they're crying after work or like they can't stop thinking about it, and like that's not healthy whatsoever. I rambled a bit, but I think if it gets to the point, or if you're at any point, whether that's like 10 years or 1 year into your job and you're like, you know what, I can't do this anymore, like then it might be time to jump ship and see what else is out there, because you don't have to be stuck in something if you don't want to. And like I think that's why there's so many opportunities out there. And of course there's compounding variables like what is the job market like, where is the job, what are you looking for, what are you asking for. But I think if you want it bad enough, it'll show up. Like hopefully it'll show up, or at least like a step to getting to exactly where you want to be.
Yeah. I think it goes back to the whole idea that we were talking about previously about having kind of non-negotiables, and sticking to that, because I loved what you said. It's like a mutual thing that you're not just going up and interviewing for a company that, yeah, like I would be really beneficial, like I would be an asset for the company. It's also like, what can you give me, right?
Mhm.
And I think also this was something that opened my eyes. I was like, I had this opinion that when you would interview for a company, you answer questions, and then you wouldn't ask anything. And that's actually not true, because
Mhm.
like many people say that it's good to ask questions and kind of learn about the company as well. If you're with the interviewer after the interview or before, depending on whatever the situation's like, you should ask questions too. You should learn about the company, and small things can really make a difference and tell you how the work culture is, how the
Mhm.
company is, and how you're gonna like it there, how you're gonna fit in. And I think those are great points. I think finally, I just want to get one piece of advice from you for anybody who is in similar shoes or who's wanting to get started. What advice do you have for the next generation of leaders?
Let yourself take a break. Like I didn't really give myself that option. I think with that intense want to just like, I want to be the strongest woman in tech, or like the most powerful woman in tech. Like I want to be a CTO and like be, yeah, like that was my goal. That was like verbatim, that was my goal. And not that it was unrealistic whatsoever. If I wanted to do it, which I don't anymore, maybe it will be my want again. Like I feel like it's okay for you to want different things at different times. But I think with that, I really ignored like a healthy sleep schedule. Like I really did overwork myself, and I tried to maintain a social life on top of that. And like at the same time, like for 2 years, I was working as a contractor as well. So all of those things piled on top of each other, I did not have, like, I would not say that that was healthy at all. And granted, all of that hard work did end up paying off. Like I now am where I am now, and I have like true work-life balance. Like I end my day, I choose to work from 9:30 to 6 Monday through Thursday, and then a little bit shorter on Fridays. So once it hits 6 o'clock, I close my laptop, I go to the gym, and maybe like all that hard work was to earn that privilege. But I think allowing yourself a moment to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna veg in my bed and just binge watch some shows if that's what you need. Or like, no, I'm not gonna do this extra 30 minutes of studying, because that extra 30 minutes of studying will not produce anything. I'm gonna go for a run instead because that's what I really need. Like really listen to yourself and let yourself relax every now and then, or do what you need to, because it's like you have 4 years plus. Like if you need to take more time, take more time. And also another piece of advice, like it's really easy once you get into the positions of these clubs, or like you start to join these things, or like let's say that you choose to work instead, or like you aren't able to join clubs so you find other outlets. Like it's really easy to stick to the same group of people. Push yourself to like meet other people outside of that, like really like meet other people to like learn how to empathize a little bit too, because there are going to be people of different backgrounds who go to school with you, who work with you, or whatever you happen to be doing during your like daily routine or like wherever you go, like make an effort to learn what they're going through, make an effort to learn like what their perspective is, because that couldn't only help you. I didn't graduate with like the most shining GPA, I'll say that right now, but I think like surrounding myself with the people that I did was a good move and definitely helped me learn that sort of people skill. I wouldn't necessarily say street smart yet, but people skill, and being able to take that into like, I don't even think I talked about where I am. Like I'm in Los Angeles. I have never lived here before. This is my first time being here. I moved here knowing one person, and a week after moving here, decided that like knowing that person wasn't good for me anymore. So I moved here literally knowing no one. And during a pandemic in 2021, had still in 2021, I had to use those people skills to like try and meet new people of different backgrounds. And, you know, not everyone is going to be 22, 23, fresh out of college. Like it's going to be people who are in their 40s, who are in their 30s, people who moved here from like other parts of the US, outside of the country, and like sort of putting yourself out there prematurely to like build that people skill. It sort of builds your confidence in being able to talk about yourself, like feel like you're not self-conscious, like being the youngest one in the room or like the shyest one or the most naive in some cases, but like building that community for yourself, not only outside of those like circles, like those little circles of clubs or um like community groups, stuff like that, but going outside of those, like branching out of your comfort zone, that could be to your advantage. And I feel like that could also help with leadership because it's an empathy skill. Like when you lead people or you lead teams or you lead companies, you're leading people. You're not leading ideas, you're not leading technology, you're not leading these inanimate things. You're leading people with lives, with values, with feelings. And what better way to learn about people than to reach out and try and like meet other people to really understand like, oh, someone with this perspective, this ability, this identity would think this way potentially, or even consulting them like, hey, I have this, what would you think from your perspective? I have this, what would you think from your perspective? And being able to gather all of that to make a decision. Like I feel like at the end of the day, that's what leadership is. And to start that early and not just think in the circle of like College of Business or circle of this particular club and reach outside of that, good skill to build. Rambled again, but
I know I needed that. Like, that was the best advice. It was a pleasure having you on here. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all these amazing things. And yeah, good luck with everything that you're doing.
thank
See
you.
you.